On January 15th, 2025, months after participating in one of the biggest rap battles in history, Drake filed a lawsuit against his own record label, UMG, accusing them of defamation by botting and payola to promote a diss record that was directed towards him called Not Like Us by rapper Kendrick Lamar. Whether you like the song or not, or who you believe won the battle, let's do a real deep dive into why Drake is actually suing his label, and you might be surprised about what we unpacked that's involved in this case, and see that this lawsuit will change the music industry completely, forever. To start, Drake has always alluded to and mentioned that the industry elites have been plotting on his downfall and would create rifts with artists to challenge him who might have already felt some kind of animosity towards him, even mentioning it back in 2015 on his song 30-for-30 Freestyle. But could this be true? Are there people in the shadows behind the scenes plotting to take him down? First, let's start with a short rundown about UMG's history and current position in the industry. Universal Music Group is the largest player in the global music industry, controlling almost 40% of the recorded music market, ahead of competitors like Sony and Warner. UMG's roster includes some of the top artists from Drake, Taylor Swift, Kendrick Lamar, The Weeknd, and over 1,000 other active artists. The label also owns other major labels like Interscope, Def Jam, and Republic Records. Because of this, UMG has significant access over radio and streaming through partnerships with iHeartMedia and streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, where they represent over 30% of their own catalog. Their exclusive deals with streaming services ensures that their artists dominate charts and playlists, boosting their revenue. Through these vast networks and strategic deals, UMG has dominated the music industry through music sales, radio, and streaming, shaping what music we hear globally. Now, who's the biggest artist on UMG? Most would say Taylor Swift, but when it comes to who's their biggest artist, streaming-wise or overall pure numbers, it's Drake. Not even considering other platforms, let's just look at the most popular one, Spotify. As of March 2025, Taylor Swift has 100.9 billion streams on Spotify. Drake currently has 112 billion streams. His closest competition in hip-hop is Eminem with 56 billion streams. Just to give an example, if you add up all of his streaming numbers across every platform, he is easily over 250 billion streams, making him the most successful artist in history, considering the new streaming era. Crazy comparison if you add up every genre of music and artist's total streams from the entire 60s, including the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, Elvis, and other great artists, they come close to Drake's numbers of 250 billion. So Drake has more or the same total streaming numbers than a whole generation combined of great artists. Now, UMG already owns the masters to all Drake's albums before 2018, which they bought from Lil Wayne in 2020 when he sold them all of Young Money's catalog for $100 million. What's important to note now is Drake owns the masters of all his recordings post 2018. So if you look at his discography, he owns his masters first starting with Care Package, everything after, and then ongoing in the future. His deal with UMG only allows them rights to license his music for profit for the duration of their deal, but once it ends, he owns it completely 100%, giving him unheard of control over his catalog for an artist his size. Now understand, it's in a label's best interest to have more power over their artist's career direction while owning their music, but Drake's dominance and demand makes it hard to not do business with him, even though he has most of the leverage. Which brings us back to the lawsuit, and let's be clear, everything we show you going forward are all alleged and are accusations from Drake's legal team and documented in the paperwork. To start, Drake filed two separate lawsuits against UMG, one in New York and one in Texas, both for defamation, alleging UMG promoted false and harmful narratives about him through a diss track, causing some people to believe the allegations and how it played a role in violence against him. accusing UMG of business fraud and potential industry corruption, basically payola and artificially inflating streaming numbers to profit off of beef. Now recently, Drake's legal team dropped the case in Texas without prejudice, meaning they can refile the Texas case later if they choose to, but we'll pause it for now because most courts generally don't like lawsuits in multiple states that deal with the same facts and claims, because for everyone involved, it wastes time, resources, and it's more strategic to focus on one active case instead of two. And more importantly, in New York, Drake's legal team has already been granted discovery since April 2nd, 2025, which means they have been granted to receive documents and all communications around promoting the diss record, with the ultimate goal to see and prove if the label orchestrated a campaign to damage Drake's public image. Most importantly, his brand, believing it was a coordinated attack designed to devalue him ahead of contract negotiations to prevent them from paying him top market value, especially after already handing him $400 million in his last deal 4 years ago, even though they already recouped on the deal. With Drake's level of success in hip-hop and his lawsuit against his own label, to put this into perspective, it's like Michael Jordan suing the NBA while playing in the NBA Finals at the same time, which is groundbreaking in and of itself. Now, let's dig deep to see if there is any real proof of the accusations in the lawsuit. A simple definition for defamation is when someone makes a false statement, written or spoken, about someone that damages that person's reputation. So simply, any diss record technically could be viewed as defamation. But if UMG illegally paid to promote a diss song, invested into a smear campaign on a song that knowingly had false accusations of Drake being involved in criminal behavior, sexual misconduct, or anything criminal related, was done so with actual malice, then Drake does have a case for defamation. UMG has major branches and operations in New York, making it the most legal jurisdiction to file the case. Plus, it's the global media capital. Courts there are more comfortable of handling high-profile cases involving celebrities. And most importantly, New York has one of the strictest defamation laws that favor plaintiffs if they can prove actual malice. And to give him the best shot in winning the case, he hired attorney Michael J. Gottlieb, who is one of the top attorneys when it comes to high-profile defamation cases. Notably, he won a case against ex-mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, who had powerful connections. But still, not only did he win the case, but he secured a $148 million judgment for his clients who were defamed. He has other major defamation cases that he's won as well. Drake basically teamed up with one of the best attorneys to fight for his case. And one of the main questions we will answer first about the case is why Drake is suing UMG instead of Kendrick Lamar. To start, UMG is the company that controls the distribution, promotion, and approval of Kendrick's music. Even though they are both signed to UMG, Kendrick is signed through Interscope and Drake is signed through Republic. Since they are both UMG artists, the label has a duty to stay neutral and to protect the interests of the artists by not favoring either side. But according to Drake's team, they didn't. And since the label has more direct responsibility in the distribution of the song, it makes sense to go at the machine responsible for promoting and publishing it. Now, some have said Kendrick could sue Drake as well for defamation because of his diss records, but legally, it most likely wouldn't hold. Defamation requires actual harm, but Kendrick's image wasn't damaged. In fact, he had the biggest numbers of his career and massive industry support, and even winning awards. Also, in New York, the statute of limitations for defamation is 1 year, and that window has already passed. Which takes us to the next question. Is this just because Drake is upset from a rap battle? A lot of people feel this ain't hip-hop, and Drake is just trying to get back at Kendrick and his haters. While that might be a percentage of truth, the main issue is Drake is making a claim that it wasn't an even playing field during the battle. See, when Kendrick first dissed Drake on Like That, teaming up with Metro Boomin and Future, Drake replied with push-ups. Then shortly after, he followed up with a tailor-made freestyle. Kendrick then replied with a solo diss record called Euphoria. and he followed that up with 616 in LA. At this point, everything seemed to be an even playing field. There was no drastic or clear-cut winner, with everyone giving credit to both artists. Drake then replied back with a diss record aimed at everyone dissing him, including Kendrick, called Family Matters, included with a remix to his Buried Alive interlude from Take Care. Almost 30 minutes later, Kendrick immediately followed up with Meet the Grams, which is when the botting allegations first started, with it receiving faster streaming numbers than usual, and Kendrick quickly followed up with the more upbeat, hit-focused diss record, Not Like Us, which is the song the lawsuit is mostly focused on for being botted and promoted illegally by UMG and Kendrick's team. Drake suspected illegal tactics like botting, and the beef ended quickly with his reply called Art Part 6. He even later posted to his Instagram story an image of a bot, hinting to what was happening. So fast forward to now with a lawsuit, he's simply stating instead of UMG staying neutral, they were using their influence and illegal tactics like payola and streaming bots to create an unfair advantage to tarnish his image, and orchestrated digital warfare around a diss song aimed at him. UMG did reply to Drake's claims, alluding Drake is just upset because he lost a rap battle, with some media platforms saying the same. But Drake's attorneys can simply argue Drake is fine with the perception of losing a battle. Proof of this is he has been in several rap battles before in the past. In 2018, one of the biggest feuds he was in was against rapper Pusha T, who released a scathing diss record. A lot of rap fans anxiously waited for Drake to reply with his own diss, but he chose to walk away and not reply directly back to Pusha T. Instead, took it in stride and moved on, releasing one of his biggest albums to date, Scorpion. So it can easily be proven that it's not about losing a rap battle, but instead it's about UMG's involvement in the rap battle, which is unheard of for a label to allegedly support and promote one artist while allegedly suppressing their other artists. Now let's get into the actual case, and what's happening right now that's significant is something called discovery. As mentioned earlier, which refers to a court-approved process for a party to request personal and private information that pertains to their case. For Drake and his lawyers, they were granted permission to obtain any and every internal documents, communications, and other materials that may shed light on UMG's involvement in the release and promotion of the diss record. The first question to answer is, even if UMG did use illegal tactics, that everyone involved might have got rid of any proof. To tackle that assumption, on discovery request number 13, they submitted a request for documents and communications to see if UMG sent any hold notices and who they sent them to. This request basically is when instructions are sent within a company internally, usually from their legal team, telling employees not to delete or destroy any documents, emails, texts, or files that will be relevant to a lawsuit or an expected lawsuit in order to preserve evidence. So Drake's legal team is asking when was it sent and who was it sent to, in order to identify if UMG anticipated the lawsuit or any related issues, and if they took the necessary steps to keep evidence before or after the lawsuit. Why this matters is because if UMG expected a possible lawsuit or anything related, they would have took the proper steps to make sure they kept all of their receipts to prove they have nothing to hide and had no negative involvement. But if they failed to send out hold notices in time to their involved staff or didn't send them at all, it shows intent to not keep or destroy important information, which by itself could lead to sanctions and penalties and a ruling in Drake's favor in the lawsuit. So it's important for UMG to show they professionally kept the proper trail of their involvement. Now, one of the most talked about discovery requests is discovery number 1 and 2, asking for copies of all contracts and agreements between UMG and Kendrick Lamar, his agents, or anyone working on his behalf, including all contracts and agreements reflecting UMG's rights to the song. Reason for this is it's documented in the lawsuit Kendrick originally signed a short-term deal with UMG, and it might have been structured to fast-track his popularity again before they both agreed to a new long-term deal, basically proving each other's worth. And it might show that they greenlit a rap beef against Drake as a marketing rollout. Now this might be one of the biggest discoveries because Drake's team will not only get his UMG contracts, but also possibly his contracts with Roc Nation, who also plays a manager role for Kendrick through his label, PG Lang, which could open up even more problems, and we will get back to this later. On Discovery 3, they are asking for all communications and anything related to Ramon Alvarez, who is one of the heads in marketing for UMG and was overseeing marketing for Kendrick's diss record. This request is to possibly expose if there was any top-level coordination of a smear campaign, and how was promoting the song discussed, doubling down that UMG engineered the diss rollouts as a promo tactic to boost Kendrick on a short trial deal. On Discovery Request 4, all documented communications relating to the payment and reimbursements of the marketing funds that benefit Kendrick or any person working on his behalf, including but not limited to Anthony Sala, who is Kendrick's direct manager, who Drake personally accused of being one of the culprits botting for Kendrick, which they might already have proof of. On a DJ Academics live stream, he interviewed a hacker who claimed he was paid by Kendrick's team and claiming it was his manager, Anthony, who paid him to bot the song Not Like Us, with 30 million views.
So you're the fake stream guy, right?
Yeah,
Now,
everybody pretty much goes to me for anything like fake streams or fake views. So there's different ways, and there's been ways in the past, and Spotify actually does end up cracking down, and they do patch it sometimes for certain artists.
yeah.
And they're actually involved. That's the craziest part about it. Spotify is in on it, and people know this, and it's been going on for a while. And because it makes them look better at the end of the day. They don't personally fake them, but they let it happen, or they have deals with the labels or the artists that it lets them pass. And it's usually them reaching out to them, being like, hey, we pretty much know you do this, but we're gonna let it slide because it helps us revenue-wise, and it also helps us, you know, make our site. And it's also good when the bigger artists do it because it makes the site look better, and it gives Spotify more ad revenue, so they could charge more for ads, and you get more time on the air, you know what I mean? The most recent song I did do all the bots for, well, most of it and the marketing was Not Like Us. I don't want to fuck anybody over. But early on, when the song first dropped, it wasn't him. I'm not gonna say he reached out to me himself because obviously he didn't. It was definitely somebody from management. They needed that win, and they maybe needed the extra push, and they thought they needed it, which they probably would have won either way. I'm not biased like I'm saying. They probably would have won without the streams. But they did it as a, you know, a scapegoat just in case. It was their insurance.
Who reached out to you on behalf of him?
I mean,
I'm not trying to post your bank account, brother. Just but speak your truth.
Bro, it's Anthony Saleh. I'm crashing out because like this is for my safety. This is how I feel. That's who paid me. Not saying I was in direct contact with him. That's just the name that was on the account that I got paid by. It was definitely somebody from management. They wanted me to do 30 million early, which fed into the rest of the views. Yeah.
Chad, he's never worked for Drake.
Yo, look at your DMs.
All
No,
Drake streams are always real. That's a fact.
Bro, agreed. Bro, nobody like that I've ever worked with has ever worked with Drake. He's the only artist that's actually keeping it 100.
So you say Drake?
And I'm not a writer. I'm not a fan of him. I don't listen to his music. Bro, I listen to like indie and like bands.
To prove he knew how to bot, he had academics create an Instagram, and he quickly ran up the followers to 100,000.
If I make a fake Instagram account right now, you're telling me you could just put like 50,000.
Send me the username. Send me the username right now. And send me the username of the account, make it, and I'll show you.
Oh, so
my bad.
No, I got 89 comments already. I'm lying. This is organic.
Yeah, I mean, I made the pages look as, you know, as good as they can get.
Wait, did you make all these pages yourself?
No, I have bots that automatically make them and scrape the internet for pictures, and they'll post them.
See, we got 30,000 followers. Yo, how many followers did you put in for me to get? I got 31 now. Oh my God, I am busting on it. I'm 151. What?
Now, maybe this guy was lying and was a hater just seeking attention. Who really knows? One thing though, it might just be a coincidence. But as mentioned earlier, Kendrick was also managed by Roc Nation, who coincidentally also manages Megan Thee Stallion. And they both have a distribution deal with UMG. And they both diss the biggest artists in their field of work in the same year. Megan Thee Stallion did it first earlier in the year against the Queen of Rap, Nicki Minaj, leaving some to believe she used a beef with Nicki for promo. And it might just be a coincidence that she was caught and had 30 million bots removed from her streams, the same amount the hacker mentioned he did for Not Like Us, which could all just be a coincidence. Now, another interesting discovery request is number 14, requesting all documents and communications relating to the May 7th armed attack and trespassing attempts at Drake's home in Toronto. Drake's attorneys are arguing because of UMG's involvement in choices of spreading a song that claims Drake to be one of the most horrendous accusations a celebrity can have, which is a PDF file. It turns some rap fans into vigilantes, trying to take Drake down and create a narrative online of him being a predator. Someone even put wanted flyers of Drake out in public, pairing him with real predators with criminal records, which they believe played a role in him having people trespass on his property, with one person even getting arrested trying to dig under Drake's property wall. And even on one late evening, someone drove by his property and fired shots into his home. And one of the bullets hit a security guard positioned outside. Drake and his team had to quickly help him and assist to stop the bleeding, which was severe. The ambulance did show up. Luckily, he was able to fully recover, but the tension was so high due to the extreme circumstances. Drake pulled his son out of school and sent him and his mother to live outside of Toronto until things felt safe again. It's important to note that this took place before any lawsuit was ever filed, but it could be telling in the court's eyes that despite their biggest artist and Drake facing real-world danger, their silence could be proof of a calculated indifference. No matter who you are a fan of, you would have to admit this shooting, no matter who was involved or the reasoning, was due to the tension from this rap beef, and that should have been the moment the label backed out of supporting the beef at all. But instead of showing concern or even making a public statement in support of Drake, his lawyers are claiming due to the greed they continued promoting the diss record. Even Drake's personal brand deals were starting to get flooded with Kendrick's fans calling Drake a PDF file, showing how the beef was being solely weaponized against Drake before he filed any lawsuit. What's interesting is, it's documented that throughout the summer and fall, Drake brought it to UMG's attention that Not Like Us was being illegally pushed beyond what should be allowed and needs to stop. And what did UMG do? According to the lawsuit, they declined to even meet with him and continued promoting the diss record. Drake then filed a petition showing he was serious that this song was being illegally pushed, grouped with a smear campaign that was industry funded. And how did UMG reply? Doubling down, choosing to keep licensing the song on the biggest stages in the world, the Grammys and the Super Bowl. It's also noted in the lawsuit that allegedly, UMG even mocked him, saying he would be ridiculed and shamed by the public for suing during a rap beef, which wouldn't be good for his image, and still continued promoting the song. But to everyone's surprise, while they were playing chess, Drake decided to blow up the whole game by filing the lawsuit. To make matters worse, his team of lawyers were given access to discovery numbers 11 and 12, which they are asking for all communications and documents related to John Janik, who is the CEO of Interscope that Kendrick is signed under. This request could expose a financial motive from the label if Janik personally benefited from Kendrick's success, and to see if UMG and Interscope was financially rewarded for pushing Kendrick's music over Drake's, which might show why they prioritize one artist over the other. Another dynamic rarely mentioned is inter-label competitions under the UMG umbrella. With the head of UMG, Lucien Grange, getting closer to retirement age, him leaving the company will leave a huge vacuum of power open for replacement. The record label under UMG that has the biggest artists is Republic Records, ran by Matt Lipman. Their competitor, Interscope, is second with their own artists, but both CEOs would be vying to take the seat of Lucien once he leaves to secure their own future empire as the new CEO of UMG. The only difference is one might have properly stayed neutral in the rap battle, while the other might have allegedly got involved to prove their worth, showing how loyal and powerful they are compared to their peers. This is all speculation, but it does add a necessary element, which is why it's included in the lawsuit. Now, altogether, there are 18 discovery requests, which will be in the description with explanations if you would like to view it. But to speed this video up, we will combine discovery requests number 9, 10, and 15 Litigation, which basically focuses on digging deep into the tools and services they use to unfairly push the diss record, asking for all documents of recording from Apple Music and Spotify as well as other platforms used. To start, when Not Like Us was officially released, it only had 5 tracking days, and despite that, on Spotify alone, it generated 53.3 million streams, averaging 10.6 million streams a day, which is major. But let's assume that the alleged 30 million bot views were real. That's over 50% of synthetic streams. While the major focus has been bots, let's do a deep dive on how a label like UMG strategically can push a song to the top. What if I was to show you it was already pre-programmed to you by being placed in playlists, media, radio, and bots before you ever clicked play? By the time you heard it, it already felt important. So let's start with playlisting. Since the label has partnerships with Spotify and all the streaming platforms, Spotify helps the label by creating tons of playlists and spreading their desired songs out. Now, some music listeners don't search for specific songs or artists and instead listen to curated playlists on the streaming apps. When doing so, they don't pay attention to what song is in it. Even if they don't like a song, they still wait on it to end for the next track, which increases the views for every song in that playlist, which is why playlisting alone is easy to manipulate. One way labels take advantage of this is by adding a popular song to a playlist in a distant little country. No one will question it and the locals will just listen through or skip it. Example, if you see a country like Turkmenistan, which is one of the least countries with hip-hop influence and one of the most closed-off countries in the world, but if it has a hip-hop record, let alone a diss record in the top 20, that's a red flag. Now, maybe a song could be that popular, especially after a Super Bowl, but how would we know? With the streaming platforms making money from labels and labels making money from streaming platforms, they basically need each other. And if the label starts their own streaming platform, raising their licensing fee with Spotify, that will put a major dent into Spotify's music revenue. If Spotify doesn't market or promote UMG's artists, that will negatively impact the reach of their artists who makes them money. So of course, they have to work together. Same goes for Apple Music, so don't expect any streaming platforms to tell the public if UMG or any label has manipulated any streams, especially since UMG is their biggest partner. Now, this is one example of how the industry uses their connections, but if we were to look deeper into even the Grammys, if you look at the last 15 years of artists that won Album of the Year or Song of the Year, one label in particular seems to reap the benefits more than others. And speaking of the Grammys, let's take a look at discovery request number 8. Drake's lawyers are requesting all documented communications related to the 2025 Grammy Awards broadcast on February 2nd and the subsequent removal of footage. Meaning when the Grammys originally broadcasted their show, they played the Not Like Us record, but not just the instrumental or chorus. More importantly, they played a specific part of the record, all while some of the powerful figures associated with Kendrick were seen high-fiving and celebrating, including the head of UMG, Lucien Grange. But a few days later, they removed that audio clip, which you can go back and confirm now. Someone had to reach out to them about something to have that clip removed. Drake's attorneys would like to know what was it and who was it, but also what was the licensing agreement and discussions between UMG and the Grammys. Was it planned and discussed to play that particular part of the song? What if even the camera angles, the perceived celebration, was pre-planned? Why would this be? Also, in Drake's lawsuit, his attorneys are shining a light on how UMG allegedly has control over this system, which reflects on Billboard. When it comes to Drake's dominance, it's been focused on streaming almost completely. For his level of an artist, he receives lower radio percentages than most of his peers. Now, we all know Billboard equals streams, radio play, and sales, with streaming and radio being almost equal in weight towards Billboard charting place. Now, we know UMG has a partnership with iHeartMedia, the biggest holders in radio stations with over 850, and all the songs that are played on the airwaves have to be licensed through the label. Also, another interesting thing that Drake's attorneys are claiming is that they have actual proof of UMG paying at least one radio promoter they know for sure of to engage and pay for play, and they worked for a New York radio station. Makes you wonder, what radio host in New York would be involved in payola? It's pretty known that the labels allegedly control what the radio plays, whereas streaming outside of playlists are mainly tailored by the people. With the radio still holding a significant weight in Billboard placements, a label could play favoritism by suppressing one artist's airplay and overly playing another. So an example of this, if a record from an artist can outperform their competition in pure streams and pure sales, but still falls short of a higher placement on Billboard if they aren't getting radio play. Another issue that's documented in the lawsuit is there was proof by these YouTube reactors and other streamers that Not Like Us was whitelisted on YouTube and had the quickest approval for immediate posts, while Drake songs had delayed approval and immediately copyrighted by UMG. What's significant about this is it has never been done before, especially from a label the size of UMG. If they understood a rap battle was going on and were whitelisting one artist but restricting the other, it's clear corporate interference in a rap battle that was supposed to be an organic cultural moment, which if found in court to be true, could damage UMG's reputation as an impartial parent company that manages other labels. What's also included in the lawsuit, they claim UMG went to the links to even alter Siri's algorithm for users with an iPhone that would request to play Certified Lover Boy. Siri would redirect them to Kendrick's new diss record, Not Like Us, instead.
I just saw somebody on Twitter request to play Certified Lover Boy on Spotify, and it just goes straight to Not Like Us. I don't believe everything I see online, so let's just test it out, okay? You're seeing my screen to a degree. All right, play Certified Lover Boy on Spotify.
Play Certified Lover Boy on Spotify.
Siri, can you play Certified Lover Boy on Spotify?
Now, some people might try to justify it by saying Kendrick mentioned Certified Lover Boy in his song, but that's not how algorithms work. Streaming algorithms usually recommend songs based on your listening history, not one trending lyric. For most streaming listeners, Certified Lover Boy would rank a lot higher in play history. There's no logical reason Siri or any algorithm would do this.
I was on Spotify, I was listening to Cleo Soul. She's amazing, I love her.
I love Cleo Soul.
I was listening in my bedroom, bro. All of a sudden, I hear Kendrick. Not like, I'm like, how is this even cute right now?
Yeah, the algorithm is not.
Algorithm's cooked. Where's the correlation?
Where's the correlation in that?
And that at that moment, I'm like, there's no way this is not rigged at that point.
Yeah, it's
literally
rigged.
rigged.
It's really rigged because it's like.
Why the fuck did they do that? Do you guys see that? Why the fuck did it play Kendrick Lamar after the album? Why the fuck would it do that? That's crazy. That is crazy.
If this is true, then this is clear interference by the label. Creating such orchestrated hype around a diss song could be viewed as manufactured, and a listener's choice is overwritten, positioning one song to dominate, even if that fan never asked for it. Look, we don't have a dog in this fight. I hope both Drake and UMG patches things up and everyone can go back to making music and money like before. Except, if the label did participate in illegal activity, the results of this case will change the music industry completely. Let's start with the most likely outcome of the case. UMG will keep trying to drag the case out until the battle is a distant thought to the public, and will have to be direct and difficult to scare off any other artists from ever thinking about filing their own lawsuit, seeking to drag it out long as possible. But at some point, instead of risking exposure of personal data or anything that could possibly be viewed as negative becomes public, they will settle. By estimation of Drake's status in music, let's assume they settle for damages between 100 and 300 million, and then re-sign him to a new deal worth 600 million, and everyone will go back to work. Except, in Drake's case, he filed for injunctive relief. Injunctive relief is something a party seeks when they believe that the damage they have suffered is so severe, no amount of money can fix what happened. Through injunctive relief, the court can order defendant UMG to repair the damage done to Drake's public image by by doing something money cannot fix. So basically, don't expect this case to be settled like any other high-profile case that is resolved privately with NDA agreements, since Drake might want the apology to be louder than the slander. Now, if the case doesn't get dismissed and Drake happens to have undeniable evidence, here are some examples of what he could receive that would be considered injunctive relief. If they both were to agree to a settlement, UMG will seek a non-disparagement clause, which means both parties promise to not speak negatively or harm each other's reputation going forward, meaning they don't want anything negative getting out to the public. Because of this, Drake will have the leverage in negotiations towards a settlement, which in financial damages, he still will most likely settle in the range of 100 to 300 million. As we said, that will stay the same. With the damage already done publicly to his image, the goal now is his future legacy, leverage, and more control going forward. Starting with the quiet removal of the diss record from future high visibility platforms. UMG will look to save face publicly by not exposing a ban on the song, but will prevent its future licensing going forward. Drake then could re-sign with UMG and demand equity within the company, even demanding a higher percentage on the streaming and sales revenue with better renewal terms, and force UMG to be more transparent with their inner dealings going forward. They could also be forced to cancel Drake's current contract, which he still owed one more album on, allowing him to walk away free to sign with another competing major, and be forced to write an apology and public retraction pinned on their official sites, all while Drake walks away being compensated and cuts UMG out of his future earnings. This might seem far-fetched, but with Drake being such a huge brand, the resolution will have to be major if it goes in his favor. The main problem for UMG is if Drake's attorneys have any damaging proof of their involvement with any of the allegations, they will not want it to go to trial. Also, any real evidence Drake's team has, they will not reveal until if it does go to trial. So it will be too big of a gamble for the label to call Drake's bluff. Because of this, UMG's main goal is if they can't get it dismissed, they will seek to settle quickly. It's not worth the risk for any illegal deeds or industry workings getting revealed. Only problem is, Drake has the money to take it to trial, and if Drake doesn't like their terms in their settlement, or they don't meet his request, that could completely change the industry, as we mentioned. Speaking of that, let's break down some major changes that would impact the entire music industry. If UMG is found guilty, and it's proven that they participated in any form of payola, they could face major federal fines and potential criminal liability upon any discovery by the FCC, FTC, and even the Department of Justice for potential fraud charges. Being that the label has so many partners and connections like Roc Nation and other media corporations who they license their songs to will all be at risk of getting their own lawsuits for unfair business practices and internally investigated by government agencies, especially the ones who willingly played the song after his lawsuit was filed in January, which would include the NFL and the Grammys, who not only played the song, but could be at risk of getting exposed for their own alleged unfair practices within their own systems. And worse, no company or brand would want to be associated with collusion and smearing another artist's image. And the Grammys have already proven that they don't want their inner workings to be exposed. Just look up Deborah Dugan's case against the Grammys. She was their former CEO who accused them of bad business practices. So all of these companies will be putting additional pressure on UMG to make this right with Drake before any alleged inner dealings come to light. With exposure of collusion and payola, this would change how all labels market and distribute their music in the future. They'll be forced to become more transparent to the public with their partnerships with streaming companies, having to expose paid promo and algorithmic biases. This could also result in hundreds of artists growing even more distrust of the labels, getting hit with even more lawsuits for possible unfair practices. Even their own employees within the company that are involved could be forced to resign, creating a big shift in the makeup of all labels associated in the lawsuit. UMG could also be forced to publicly expose how they pay influencers, media personalities, and streaming platforms to promote a specific artist and songs, which one of the platforms that were already exposed in the lawsuit is right here. Now, I understand there's going to be people who don't agree with Drake filing a lawsuit regardless. But one thing is for sure though, the public might not understand it, but smear campaigns have always been a part of business in America. And the elites know more than most. The power of labeling someone specifically a PDF file which is the worst accusation a celebrity would want to be associated with. It's so entrenched in America's DNA that this isn't the first time those type of claims were placed on artists. The first ever major artist before Drake, Ye, before Michael Jackson, before Elvis, the first ever American superstar whose life was weirdly very similar to Drake's. His name was Louis Moreau Gottschalk. Born in 1829, he was born and raised in New Orleans. While black people in America were still enslaved, New Orleans had one of the first populations with freed black people, and the culture became entrenched in Creole, African, and Caribbean culture. He grew up in a wealthy family who were known at the time to only hire freed black people. One of his closest parental influences was his black nanny, Sally, who inspired him and gave him the soul to his sound. He fell in love with the Afro-Caribbean rhythms and Creole folk songs all around him, so much that as he turned out to be a kid prodigy on a piano and as a composer, even receiving praise that he will become the king of pianists, which was told to him by arguably one of the greatest pianists in history, Frédéric Chopin. And you could argue Gottschalk was. He changed the sound of music forever. He was the first artist to incorporate Black American culture rhythms and sounds into his music, which was groundbreaking. At the time, America was viewed as the rejects of the world and lower class, considered the steamboat country with no culture. But in Gottschalk's case, he had an even bigger obstacle playing Black American sound and rhythms in music. It was looked down upon, especially by the majority of the world in music, surprisingly, even in America, which was practicing in slavery. At this time, pianists were viewed as the rock stars or today's top music superstars. In Europe was the standard in musical taste, with all the best artists being European-trained composers. But Gottschalk's talents were so great that his songs were undeniable. So much that he was the first to show Black American art could be considered a high quality amongst the elite class. He went on to travel the world, playing his music of Black American culture for kings, queens, and packed out shows all around the world. He became the first American global superstar. And no matter where he was, before every performance, he made sure to tell the crowd he's an American artist, and most of all, from New Orleans, which was a known Black prominent state. He was considered a young bachelor, known as a ladies' man who never married but did have a baby out of wedlock by this baddie, Ada Claire, who was a known actress and writer called Queen of Bohemian. He was cheered everywhere around the world, except he faced his toughest critics back home in America, since the country was far from accepting an artist who represented Black art, but his music was still undeniable. He was dropping bangers like Bambula and the banjo. And to understand how different his music was compared to his competition, listen to this. And now, this is Gottschalk. You can clearly hear the difference in how he was ahead of the times amongst his peers. Now, to finish the point and make this long story short, at the height of his career, while doing a tour back in America with packed sold-out venues and constant praise from fans and beautiful women chasing him, a jealous rival belonging to a rival piano brand accused him of being a PDF file to a young student. The rumors spread quickly, fueled by hatred. Even some locals made statements in the newspaper threatening him with a tar and feathering, which was a brutal form of public humiliation at the time. Though the accusations were not true, Gottschalk made the heartbreaking decision to leave America and never to return. Just 3 weeks later, while performing to a massive crowd in Brazil, he collapsed on stage and died from exhaustion, overworking himself. He was only 40 years old. Everyone knows what damage certain accusations can do to an artist's image, but few understand what it costs that artist in silence and legacy. But this type of tactic has always been proven to be the best to tear down someone's image in the media. And some people have even accused Drake of asking to be called such a thing by Kendrick during the battle, when he mentioned in Taylor Made Freestyle where he rapped, talking about him like a young girl's. That's a gift from me. Heard it on the Button podcast, so it's gotta be true. But most people who say that are just plain ignorant. because Drake was referring to the clip where on an episode of Joe Budden's podcast, he dissed Drake for dating a girl who was in her early 20s.
These 25-year-olds, I'm listening to the album.
Which is far from saying, call me a PDF file. Because no one should play with that type of accusation. At the end of the day, whether you love Drake or hate him, whether you think Kendrick won the battle or not, this lawsuit is bigger than any rap beef. It's about power, influence, and control of the music industry. So again, if Drake's allegations are true, this case could expose a level of manipulation that goes beyond hip-hop, showing how labels and streaming platforms can shape narratives, push agendas, and even alter the trajectory of an artist's career. And with facts over feelings, if any artist is caught using bots to inflate their streams, they're not just cheating the system, they are disrespecting the art of music. One narrative that was being spread around was that Drake has benefited from the same illegal label tactics. Let's be real, if Drake is one of the biggest artists in history and he's calling out illegal tactics by a label at this level, risking his own legacy, it wouldn't make sense for him to risk being exposed of using the same tactics himself. So there has to be some sort of truth he sees in these accusations, and if he wins, this case will expose whether or not fans care about if the system is really rigged. If you still cheer while the industry allegedly cheats just because it benefits your favorite artist or fuels the hate you have for one artist, then you're no longer rooting for talent. You don't believe in the culture of hip-hop and instead just your own agenda and side winning, even if it includes illegal tactics by a system. The same system that Drake forced them to change how they operate. The industry never wanted an artist to be this dominant without full control of them. He's the one that's been snubbed by the Grammys, removed from some key playlists, has suppressed radio play, so much that he was forced to build his own lane outside of traditional radio, which could explain why Drake is standing alone and calling it out. Because there are artists right now that are using bots and social media manipulation. And from some of my own research, following Drake's career, he has mostly been anti-industry. The proof is in his numbers, where it's proven his songs are chosen to be played by the people, while the industry rewards who they want you to listen to. And maybe Drake's one of the only artists that doesn't need the machine. And maybe that's why they hate him so much. So we all are left to question, are we a fan of the art or just another pawn in the industry's game? In the end, if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe for more. Thank you always for the support.